Welcome to the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson here with my friend, my partner, my brother from another mother, Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd, how you doing, my friend?
Good. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you. I'm on the healing side. This cold has really taken a beating on me, but we're getting there.
Yeah, it's. I've talked to a lot of people that have had little viruses and colds recently. Yeah. So, just trucking along in 2022, man.
That's right. What a way to start off the new year. But maybe that means, we'll get like a quarter through and everything will be sunshines and butterflies and maybe some unicorns too.
That's what I'm hoping for. Lots of rainbows and unicorns. Let's get to the meat of this.
All right, let's do it.
Get going today. This week, we have the honor of talking with artist, activist, and author Danielle SeeWalker. You can check out Danielle's beautiful work and her projects on her website, SeeWalker.com. That's SeeWalker. And you can follow her on Instagram at SeeWalker_art. Welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
Yeah, we're excited. I love your work. I've been perusing your Instagram and your website, and man, you do a lot of things and you do it well. So we're really excited to have you on.
Thank you.
I want to start out. You live here in Denver currently, but this is not where you grew up. So
yeah,
can you take a moment and tell us where you're originally from?
I will. Peti washte mitaku yapi Danielle SeeWalker amach yapi Húŋkpapÿa Lakļóta na ocheti shakuma ia waslata e Manhattan, Denver, Colorado, LYT. Hello, everybody, all my relatives and relations. I am Danielle SeeWalker, and I'm born and raised in North Dakota. I'm from the Great Sioux Nation, or the Seven Council Fires, and the Standing Rock Sioux Nation is where I'm a citizen. But I currently live in Denver, Colorado.
I want you to start off by talking about your art and what mediums you work with and what you want to convey with your art.
Wow, that's a big question. I'm always evolving, always doing new things. What I want to convey through art is always changing as well. But currently, I do a lot of different painting in different forms, from studio work in work on canvas, to working in public art and painting on walls, which has always been a dream of mine since I was a kid. Now that I'm able to paint and draw on a wall is pretty awesome. So mural work has been kind of my most recent adventure in art. Really I would say the past couple of years, I've been, my art has always kind of been my journal or my diary, and very personal. And it hasn't been up until probably just right before the pandemic that I started to publicly or share my art with other people. I've always kind of just kept it close and not really put it out into the world. But I have, and it's really been a journey of showing who I am in my identity as a Lakota woman, and sharing kind of my healing power or my medicine that I convey through art. And so it's a very personal work that I do. And a lot of times it tells stories of who I am, where I come from, the people around me, my ancestors, and what I hope for the future generations.
Did you always want to be an artist? Were your family artists?
Yeah. So my dad was an artist, self-taught artist. I come from a family of self-taught artists. I think we are just innately creative people. Native people never really conveyed things through written word. And we always drew, and that's how we conveyed our stories and who we were. And so I think just by nature, we draw and we paint and we tell visual stories. But I'm also self-taught. I never went to school. And I've since forever, since I can ever remember, I've always been a creative person, creating in some way, shape, or form.
I read somewhere in an article that you used to hound your mom when you used to go shop for school supplies to always try to convince her to buy the largest box of crayons that you could get.
Yeah. Yes. I still think about that today. The other day I was thinking about the colors I used to love. One of them was called macaroni and cheese, and it was like this orange yellow color in the Crayola box. And you could only get that color if you bought like the 64 pack with the crayon sharpener in the back. So that I always aim to try to just do whatever I could. I'm like, I'll do extra chores. I'll do whatever. I just want that big box of crayons.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that story. That's fantastic. But I think it brings back childhood memories for all of us, because I think we're all trying to get the big box of crayons. So.
Yeah.
So you said that it's been a recent thing, like just pre-pandemic, that you started sharing your art.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for that, and why did you kind of play it close to the chest as far as showing people what you do?
Yeah, it was really people around me. So when I moved to Denver in 2018, I kind of slowly putting myself out there in the community, and it's really hard to make friends as an adult, especially because I work remotely from home. So it's not like I even go to an office. So I just started kind of putting myself out into the community. And I mean, Denver is such a dream place for me to live because it has everything that I could ever want in terms of having a Native community around me, having an awesome art community, the best of, being in an urban area, but also being off the grid in like 30 minutes. So I just started putting myself out there into those different areas and community. And, as folks, I started to get to know people around me, they, ask me, what do you do? What do you like to do? And, art is something I've always loved to do. So that's always kind of a topic of conversation. And a couple folks were like, hey, show me what you kind of art you did. And I think I had some pictures on my phone. And I happened to be meeting a woman who's an awesome artist here locally in Denver as well. And I didn't realize that. And she goes, wow, this is awesome art. You should really put it out there. And I remember being like, I don't know. But fast forward a few months later, she reached back out to me and said, hey, listen, have you ever done a mural? And I was like, no way. I've never painted large scale in my life. And she's like, would you consider collaborating with me on a mural? And I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And she really encouraged me to, put my art out there and kind of introduced me to a lot of venues that I could do that and opportunities. And so I just took that leap and did it. And it's really been an awesome journey since then.
So you feel like you've gotten a lot of support and been able to meet people in the art community and sharing that experience?
Yes, it's awesome. And one thing that I just absolutely love is that I'm able to meet a lot of other women artists here. There's so many strong powerhouse women artists that I admire and have looked up to, and now am able to meet and now be friends with and work alongside. So it's just been a fantastic journey and so much support in this community.
That's fantastic. You just recently moved to Denver. Where else have you lived in the United States? Because you've lived in quite a few different places, right?
I have, yeah. So I moved here in 2018 from South Carolina. I lived in the South for about 2.5 years prior to Denver. And before that, I was just outside Philadelphia, living in Eastern Pennsylvania for a long period of time. Went to university there. My kids were born there. Really had some roots put down in Pennsylvania. And before that, I lived in Illinois, Nebraska. So yeah, kind of a little bit of everywhere.
Yeah, those are some very diverse places as far as geographically and, everything else that goes along with it, right?
Yes, definitely.
So what did you study at university?
I studied anthropology, sociology, and then psychology, and then did my master's in counseling psychology.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Congrats.
Thanks.
Has it been pretty easy since you've started showing your art and sharing your art as far as getting it out there and having people view it? Has there been any challenges?
I think there's always challenges. There's always internal challenges that I face, of like, oh gosh, what are people going to think? Are they going to like it? Am I going to be rejected? I don't know. I just always have a lot of questions, but for the most part, it's been such a great positive journey. And when one door opens, it seems like a couple more open alongside it. So it's been really, really great.
The work is so extremely beautiful. It's exquisite. Has it taken you a while to figure out what you wanted to do with this work, to find your voice? Or did you kind of know from the get-go where you were going with it?
No, I definitely did not and still don't really know where I'm going with it. I've done so many different types of art from, doing kind of mural work, which is based off a ledger style of artwork that dates back hundreds of years. And I brought it sort of into a contemporary way. And then, in my studio work, I do more freestyle expressionism type work, and I'm working on a series called The Braided Women. Currently, but I've started exploring and kind of in my mind exploring what I want to evolve to next. I have a few exhibitions coming up this year that I want to kind of showcase something different, but still keep intact on like my style and kind of where I'm at today, but bring it to a different perspective or level.
So where is the work going from where it currently is to what you anticipate doing and are doing for these exhibitions that you have coming up?
So I love the series that I'm working on now. They were all actually it was based off a dream I had last year. In this dream, I saw this woman with just one eye and kind of the rest of her face was blurred out, but she had these long, beautiful braids, didn't speak any words, but she was so powerful in my dream. And I remember waking up just being like, I couldn't shake it. And I just kept seeing this powerful eye. And so I just couldn't, I was like, I'm just going to paint it. So I painted it in probably an hour. And that was the first one of the series. And really just been kind of evolving from there. And what I want to do is with that series, kind of bring some beadwork into it. Beadwork is something that the Lakļóta and a lot of other Plains tribes have used for a long time to adorn the way they dress, their shoes, jewelry, etc. And so I want to kind of incorporate some beadwork into these paintings.
So this work that you're talking about, and I'm going to share my screen with you real quick.
Okay.
Is this part of this series?
Yeah. Yep, it is.
Okay. And this is Urban Res Girl. Is that the name of this piece?
Yeah. Yep. Urban Res Girl.
Let's talk about this a little bit. I love this work. And so talk about what's going on in here and some of the things that are represented.
Yeah. So this particular piece was probably, it was done last year. I was several braided women deep when I did this one. So this one's called Urban Res Girl because I kind of identified with that. I have family that lives on the reservation. I visit there often. My dad grew up and was born there, is buried there. He passed. But I grew up outside the reservation. Well, I left North Dakota when I was a teenager. And so when I moved to Pennsylvania and other cities, I realized that I still wanted to keep closely connected to my native identity, but it was really kind of difficult because when you move to places where there's no native populations, it can easily slip through you. And you can sort of live in this whitewashed world. So anyway, kind of circling back to this, when I came here to Denver, I found this awesome native community here where there's people that identify like I do, where, you have family from the reservation. You probably lived on the reservation at one point, but now you live in this urban area and you sort of carry these two worlds with you. And so this painting is, with this series, I use elk tooth as sort of the main clothing that these women are wearing. Elk teeth dresses are very prominent in Plains tribes. We still wear them today when we do powwows or dancing, etc. And I love the way it looks. So I incorporate that into it. And of course, the woman's wearing braids. And in this particular piece, one of the braids is sort of floating up into the air as if it has a life of its own. And that stems from this recent news about the boarding school era and how, that was just such a detrimental time for a lot of Native people. And one of the things they did was cut our braids off, and we weren't allowed to really present ourselves the way we always have. And so I sort of wanted to incorporate braids and how it's important, and our hair is very important to us, not only for women, but also men. And so I kind of bring these braids back in and give them a life of their own. And then, of course, that powerful eye that is featured in this painting stems back to that dream I had. And then the lines on the face sort of represent the journey that Native people are on. We have our ups, our downs, we're all over the place in terms of how our history has been, where we are at today, where we're going. It's a journey, and it's not always uphill. It's kind of all over the place and very complicated and confusing.
I liked what you wrote underneath this photo. So we walk in two worlds, like having an Air Jordan on one foot and a moccasin on the other. I think that is so well spoken, and it's true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, that kind of ties back to the title of the piece, and the why I made it was this feeling of having to walk into a world, living in Denver, an urban area, but still keeping intact on who we are as Native people. We have one of the highest populations of urban Native people here in Denver. We're the crossroads of Indian country, and we are so good at keeping who we are intact, but we also fit into contemporary society very well, as well. We're contributing members of society.
How difficult is that to be from a reservation and then moving to someplace that's, urban? I mean, it's got to be kind of a culture shock.
Yes. When I moved from small town USA, where I was considered the minority and there was nobody else around me that was a minority except for kind of Native people. When I moved to Pennsylvania, I remember seeing a Black person for the first time in my life, seeing a lot of other minority people in my life. And it was such a shock to me, but in a good way, because I was like, wow, there's other people that, this is a melting pot. I don't always have to feel singled out and different, because everybody's different here and accepted. So it was just, I remember being a 16-year-old girl, just feeling like, oh my gosh, I've stepped into a museum for the first time in my life and saw a painting that I only ever saw in books. And I remember crying and just being like, wow, I'm out of this bubble that I never thought I'd be out of.
And I think I read in that recent article from Wash Park Life. Is that the name of the publication?
Yeah, Urban Life Wash Park. Yeah.
Urban Life Wash Park. That's right. Thank you. That you came from like a very diverse background as well, as far as like kind of had a conservative upbringing. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did. So North Dakota is not the most diverse state, not the most liberal state. And so growing up kind of in this bubble and being biracial, my mom is white, my dad is Native, and having a mother who's white, she was a single mother for a long time. And I sort of was forced into this whitewashed world. Not to her fault. She always tried her best to keep, me connected to my Native roots and knowing who I am and all of that. But I always had to wear long braids. My last name was very obvious that I was Native. And so I was ridiculed a lot in being in this very conservative environment. And it's not always looked at as being a positive thing as being a Native American in where I grew up. There's a lot of stereotypes and microaggressions that occur.
Yeah, you get that sense. And, Wes being from South Dakota, he's seen it. My wife is born and raised from South Dakota, and we've had multiple conversations about how the Native population is perceived and the racism that they face.
Yeah.
It's sad, and it's crazy that we haven't been able to embrace that segment of the population, and that they still suffer from these prejudices.
Yeah.
Talk about the significance of the braids and what that means in the Native culture.
Yeah. So having long hair is very, very important. It's sort of looked at as sort of another limb almost. When you cut it off, you lose some sort of sense of yourself, power, abilities. And so we keep our hair long and, we keep them braided, and the braids represent mind, body, and spirit. And so when we braid those, it's with intention, and not just women, but also men and boys. And for a long time, that was suppressed. And it all kind of goes back to the boarding school era where we were, and I say we because I have family that went to boarding school. My grandma was a boarding school survivor. And so they were, forced to cut their hair. They were no longer able to speak their languages. They couldn't dress the way they always had dressed in our traditional clothing. And they were punished severely if they did that. And so the braids is something that we've reclaimed back since then. And, I think we really started to see that in the 1960s during the civil rights movement. And when there was a lot of Pan-American Indian groups that were coming together to say, you know what, we're tired of being suppressed. We're going to be who we are. And they started growing their hair out again and wearing braids. And today it's much more normalized to have long hair. We still see in the news every once in a while of, other races including Black people, where, their hair is a topic of conversation in schools or wherever. And it's just ridiculous that we're living in the 21st century and it's still something that people get annoyed about. But our hair is very important to us. And I love that we've reclaimed that back. And, the only time we really cut it is when somebody passes in our family. And that's a way of mourning and showing that, we're in a stage of mourning.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. That's a new one on me. And I grew up in Sisseton. So I don't know if you know the Sisseton-Wahpeton and Dakota tribe. Yeah. So I grew up as a child in all my formative years before I left. And so very close to the Native population when I was growing up. My first wife is Dakota. My daughter is half Dakota, half white. So she probably understands where you're coming from. What's interesting about both my ex-wife and my daughter is they both chose to pull away from the tribe. They pulled away, they moved to Arizona and tried to kind of, and I remember having discussions with my wife where she grew up in Chicago initially. And so when she went back, she really felt like she was walking in two worlds. Like some of the natives wouldn't accept her because she wasn't from, her dad was Dakota, her mother was Choctaw. So there was that remove. And then of course she didn't fit in the white community as well. So she really felt removed. So her decision was, I'm leaving the tribal life behind and trying to find my own identity as an individual woman. So, and then my daughter when she moved back with her grandparents, she had kind of the same experience. So did you ever feel like that where you were kind of not really accepted by either community, or were you fully embraced by your Native heritage?
I mean, every word you just said, I definitely felt, and I completely identify with that. I mean, growing up, I had a very huge loss of sense of identity loss growing up. I went to school in Bismarck, North Dakota, which is off the reservation. And while there were other Native kids around me, I still felt like, I don't really fit in here. And then, on the white side, I just didn't fit in there. And and then I'd go to the reservation and I just felt like I didn't fit in there. So absolutely. But I've really done a lot of work to kind of heal. And I tried to suppress who I was for a long time. I remember as a teenager, I dyed my hair blonde. I tried not to get my skin too tan. I wanted to change my last name from SeeWalker to Walker. I mean, I just was adamant on I do not want to identify as a Native person. But, I since realized that I can't, that's just who I am. And I can't hide it. I can't run away from it. So I really went on this journey to accept it and learn from it. And I think it's great. And since moving to Denver, and meeting people that are in a similar situation as me who don't live on a reservation. And we found this community here where it's awesome. And today I embrace who I am fully as, white and Native. So it's still a work in progress.
Oh, I think it always is. I think it always is. And that's beautiful. And I really admire you for that, because it's it can be hard to really find your identity culturally, and especially when you're mixed race. And so good for you for really trying to embrace both heritage and find your individuality in all this, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your experience is the experience of a lot of Natives out there, right? Because there's a ton of people that are of mixed race, and not to mention the fact that in this country, since colonization happened, indigenous people have been displaced from the get-go. So there's that gets passed on, and that generational thing of not really feeling like you really belong, right?
Yeah, still to this day, there's, we aren't even supposed to be here. Native people are not supposed to be here. We're the blueprint of genocide of this country. And the fact that we still exist, even though I think the latest census shows we're just above 2% of the population, we're still here. And we are the descendants of the strongest that were able to survive. And I think we have a lot to say about that. And it's definitely an interesting history. We've been displaced. We continue to be displaced, but we're so strong. And I love that there's a lot of people speaking up and using their voice.
Yeah, I think this is a great time for that. And I think people are really embracing their culture, and not just the Native American community, but African Americans and Puerto Ricans and, all of that, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
I want to go back to this piece that we were just talking about and talk about some of the materials that you incorporated into this piece.
Yes. So this is a mixed media piece. It has acrylic paint, aerosol. So spray paint is something I've recently been loved to work with, and also has oil paint and oil pastels. And then it's on canvas. And then kind of, it's hard to see, but you could probably see it faintly, are some buffalo shapes that are embedded in the back. And those are cut out of checks, paper checks that a lot of Native people get it. I get these checks. I have land on the reservation, and there's grazing rights that happen. And so I get paid, like literally pennies for people to graze their livestock on this land that I own. And so these checks, I just feel like are sort of a slap in the face. They're US government checks. I never cash them. I always just kind of hold on to them. And I've recently started cutting them out into buffalo shapes and pasting them or, adhering them into my work as sort of a big FU to the government.
I love that.
You're not alone in the FU to the government sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw these shapes and I was wondering about that, but I wasn't positive that that's what I was seeing. But yeah, I saw these shapes that I thought were buffalo, but I'm glad you spoke to that. And I definitely wanted you to speak upon the usage of these checks.
Yeah. You wouldn't know that they're checks by looking at them. Obviously, they're painted over top, but just, it's sort of like a hidden kind of, I don't know, a little secret that I put into my paintings.
I think that's wonderful. I love that.
I want to talk about another piece here. Talk about this. This is a really beautiful piece. Thank you. And I'm curious about it.
Yeah. So it's called Not Your Exonym. And what that really means is, so this one stems out, I get the question a lot, what tribe are you from? And a lot of, I always say I'm Húŋkpapја from Oceti-Sakowin, the Standing Rock Nation. And they say, oh, you're Sioux. I'm like, well, okay, I guess if that's what you're familiar with, but really the term Sioux was an exonym or a word given to us by the French during colonization. And we don't refer to ourselves as that, despite a lot of our tribal names as positioned by the government, like for instance, the Standing Rock Sioux Nation. We don't refer to ourselves as that. We call ourselves the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people, and that's who we are. So I wanted this painting to be about that and kind of bring a conversation around that we're not the Sioux, that's something that was given to us. And this piece has, her braids are created out of a French book that I picked up in France. I love old bookshops. And so whenever I get the chance, I always pick up these really old books and love to incorporate pages. Either I draw on the pages or I cut the pages out. And this one was published in the late 1800s, around the same time the French came and colonized the Dakota territory. And so I wanted this to sort of just be another layer to that story. And she's sort of coming out of the darkness of that and bringing, coming out of the dark and into the light is, no, I'm not Sioux, I'm Lakota.
And for people that don't know, there's a lot of different terminology that gets thrown around, right? As far as names but the reality of it is that's not the way you identify. It's not the way that Native Americans see themselves. They don't think of themselves in that way. It's like whatever tribe you're from, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, like the Navajo, that's a Spanish word. They actually are called the Dene. They're the Dene people. The Crow tribe, they're not the Crow. That wasn't a word that they used. They're the Absolute tribe. So there's, all the common tribal names that people know about and what's printed and what's in our history books are really not the terms that we are as a people.
And that's something that's never even addressed when you're taught any kind of history when you're in school. Like it's inaccurate and B, it's really a whitewashed history from the white perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another layer of genocide and them taking over who we are as a people and making their mark on who we are, and that's not who we are. So I'm really glad that today, we can speak up about these things. Just a generation ago, we couldn't speak up about these things freely.
For people that don't know, and most people won't know, but how many tribes are there in North America?
Federally recognized, again, stamp of approval by the government. There's 574. There's many more tribes that are not recognized by the government that exist. And, there at one point, there's probably thousands of different tribes.
Because at one point there was millions of people living here on this continent.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. Many tribes have gone extinct.
And each one has their own language or dialects thereof, right?
Yes. One thing I think is always funny is, I get people, and this is, no fault of theirs. It's just ignorance on behalf of our education system and really lack of information. But, I get the question like, well, tell me about the Native American culture, or how do you say hello in Native American, or, silly things like that. And I just chuckle because that's the same thing as saying like, how do you say hello in European? There's a lot of different cultures and identities that make up the Europe continent. And, that's same with Native American people. We all have our own languages, our own dialects, our own cultures, our own belief systems, our own creation stories, everything. We're all very, very different.
Yeah, that's something I never thought about until I read this book that you wrote. And I want to talk about that, but I want to talk a little bit more about the art before we move on to that. But yeah, that was mind-opening to me because I had no clue, and I never thought of it in those terms. That there's this blanket description of indigenous people, just Native Americans, but that's pretty insulting just to be considered, part of this really large group of different people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There is one I'd like to talk about. It looks like it's a snowboard, and it's MMIWG2S.
Yeah. Let me pull that one up.
Yeah, that one. I love that piece, and I love what it's representing. And I want you to, if you want, I'd like you to address that.
This is an oldie but goodie. I love this piece. I forgot about this piece. So I did this as a group exhibition with a bunch of women as we all painted a junior snowboard. So you're right, it's not a snowboard. And what I wanted to convey through this piece was about the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Two-Spirit. So that's what the MMIWG2S stands for. Again, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Two-Spirits. And so this one is a real life Native woman. I used a photo. It's an archival photo, probably from the late 1800s, a very famous photo. And I just recreated it in this piece and then put a handprint, a red handprint on her necklace as sort of that designation of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls epidemic that is currently among us. And so that's what this piece is about. And I kind of conveyed the colors, a lot of bright colors, not the traditional rainbow, but still just a bunch of bright colors to sort of tie in that Two-Spirit piece to it. And when I say Two-Spirit, that's sort of the umbrella term or Native American term for being gay, lesbian, trans. We refer to it as Two-Spirit. And
in the Indigenous culture, they don't look down on those people like they do in other cultures, like in modern day society, what has gone on, correct?
That's correct. Yes. Again, it all stems back to colonization, and religion played a really, really big effect on perceptions and beliefs. And the Catholic Church came in and really tried to convert Native people into their belief system. And one of the ways was, saying that being gay is bad. But historically, many tribes, including my tribes, celebrated somebody who was embodiment of being two-spirited and having both man and woman or feminine and masculine energies about them. It was actually looked upon as a celebrated and honor if you had somebody in your family that was a two-spirited person. And so, that was suppressed for a very long time, but now there's sort of this revival on being two-spirited, and people are very open about it and very proud. And, in some tribes, there's more than just 2 or 3 identities. I think in the Dene or the Navajo culture, they have, upwards of like 6, 7, 8 different sexual orientations or identities in terms of male, female, female, masculine. So each tribe, again, has their own belief system on it. But what I've found in general, in talking to lots of different people from different tribes, is that it's always been a very celebrated and honorable thing to have a two-spirited person among you in your community.
Yeah, they're revered, right? They
Yeah.
tend to be spirit leaders and healers, and it's an honorable thing.
Yes, there was a in the Diné culture, there was a weaver, born a male but identified as both male and female, who was a very predominant weaver in their community. And I think they even sent this person to Washington, D.C. to do, as a delegator on behalf of their tribe. So they're looked upon as a leader among their community.
Can you address the red hand thing? Is that just representation of the missing and murdered indigenous people? I've seen the image used on placed over their face, as in,
yes,
which appears to be like silenced?
Yeah. So the red hand is sort of that symbolic messaging around the MMIW issue. And so, yeah, you'll often see the red handprint over the face, over the mouth, as a way of silence, or if you're being attacked, oftentimes they'll put the hand over their mouth, and many times these women end up murdered. And so the red sort of symbolizes the blood that comes along with that. So it's a very dark symbol, but it's a reality to our people.
And it's a powerful symbol. Just visually, it's powerful in itself. So I think it conveys a message that is clear and poignant. Thanks for addressing that. And just as an interesting side note is our Attorney General just said that because they were really putting some money towards investigation of missing and murdered women here in South Dakota. Well, he just announced that he doesn't have enough money in the budget to address that, which I think is a crime. Now, I didn't read the whole article, so I might be getting this a little wrong, but it's once again, it's just a shame. It's an absolute shame that we allow this to continue without proper investigation and resolution.
Yeah, it's a big problem. And I'm not surprised to hear that, with having Deb Haaland in the position she's in Washington, I think is really elevating some of this. She's put an MMIW task force together from a federal standpoint, but we still have a lot of work to be done state by state, especially in states like South Dakota, where you have such a high population of Native people and where this epidemic is just out of control.
Yeah.
And people don't realize this, that there's thousands of women that go missing or victims of violence every year.
Yep. Almost 1 out of every 2 or 3 women, Native women, will experience violence in their lifetime. Yeah, the statistics are terrible.
And it's overwhelmingly not other people from their tribe. It's non-Native people that are doing these terrible acts.
Yep. I mean, it definitely, there's some violence that happens, within our own communities with our own Native men and women. That's a shame to hear about as well, but it's absolutely a problem with a lot of non-Native people coming into tribal lands and knowing and understanding that there's a loophole that, they can commit these crimes on federal lands, and that it's very, very difficult to investigate it because of jurisdictional issues. And so, that contributes hugely to why this is a problem.
And you speak to that in your book, which I thought was also very educational for me, because I'd never thought about it again, that because there's all these different entities that come into play, it sounds like the buck kind of gets passed, or there's like confusion about who is really supposed to be overseeing what's, the investigation, what have you.
Yes, absolutely. Native nations, tribes that are recognized by the government have we're sovereign nations, which means that we have our own government, we have our own police system, we have a lot of programming and things that we are in control of on our own. But when crimes occur, certain levels of crimes like murders, our police are not able to investigate that on our own tribal lands. We have to, and then the state police outside of that, whatever state that tribe is in, is also not allowed because it's federal land. And so we have to call the FBI in, and the FBI is oftentimes overwhelmed with their own situations. They don't want to go to remote North Dakota or remote area in Montana to investigate. And if they do, they have to put it on the back burner. And, we all know maybe we don't all know, but, when somebody goes missing, the first 48 hours are detrimental, or not detrimental, but they're very, very important for us to to trace where these missing people go. And it's almost never happens where the FBI is there in 48 hours. So these cases end up cold.
Yeah. Well, I love this piece, and I think it's very powerful. And so thanks for talking about this, because I think it's an important subject.
Thank you so much.
The other thing I want to talk about is that, and this is a thing that I learned from reading your book, is that there's not necessarily defined genders, correct? There was never like, people weren't recognized necessarily as male or female. That's a European idea, that it was really how people communicated, right? Like there's a certain males communicate in certain ways, women communicate. Speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, and that's interesting. And I don't know about all the other tribes, but I say that on behalf of my own tribe and where I'm from, and the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota people. In our language, the way we identify ourselves is by the words that we use. We don't have pronouns. We don't have he or she as pronouns or words in our language. It's more of like how you refer to yourselves and how you use our language to talk about yourself or amongst other people. It's kind of hard to explain, but you're absolutely right.
That book that you wrote is a wealth of information, I'll tell you what. And it was perfect for me because I don't necessarily read a lot these days. And so it's something I'll have to go back and read again, another time or two. I want to talk about another piece real quick, Danielle. And it's kind of different from the other work in some ways. And I love what you've incorporated into this piece.
Yeah, so this is a study that I was doing. I did a few of them that are very similar to this, where it's a very basic sort of silhouette of a portrait of a man. And I was doing these as a study in preparation for a mural that I did. And it goes back to this ledger style art that I mentioned earlier, where ledger art was done on raw hides, buffalo hides, deer hides, etc., where our people would draw out these characters, and it was a whole year of events that we call winter counts. And these winter counts depicted like what happened in that year from winter to winter. And the drawings are very, very basic and simple. And they're very similar to this, probably not even this much detail, no face, very basic outline, basic colors being used. And it was so that the attention wouldn't be on the art itself, but rather what's happening in the art and what's happening in the story and what events were taking place. And so that's what this type of piece is this ledger style. But I bring a contemporary twist to it. I put a hat on it. A hat is, we started kind of amongst current Native culture today. We love wearing these really cool hats and our beadwork and, fun patterns and scarves. So it's sort of a contemporary twist to ledger art. And I incorporated a beaded piece onto it. I stitched a beaded piece, which is adorned on the hat. But yeah, this was a piece that I was doing several of these as sort of a study as I was getting ready to do a big mural at the Denver Indian Center.
It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
How long have you been doing beadwork? Is that something that you grew up doing?
No, I grew up seeing it, and I always wished I could learn, but moving around a lot, I didn't have an opportunity to really like shadow any of my aunties or anybody that did beadwork. My dad did beadwork as well, but I started learning in my early 20s.
And this is a canvas piece?
Yes, it's canvas with acrylic, and then that beaded floral work is stitched onto the canvas.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you actually did the beaded piece and then stitched it onto the piece of canvas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How hard is it to do this beaded work? Because it looks very intricate.
It is intricate. And a lot of people are, when they see it, they're like, oh, how do you have the patience to do that? But I love it. It's not necessarily difficult. I love to do it. It's more, you definitely have to have patience. It's time consuming, but it's very meditative work for me. I love just sitting in quiet or, having an audiobook on or a podcast and doing my beadwork. I could do it for hours, and I do it for hours at a time.
I'm going to throw out a name. I don't know. Do you know Wade Patton from Rapid City?
Yeah, I do. I love his work.
His beadwork is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Like the clouds he's done. Oh my God.
He does them on these cuffs. My dream is to collect one of his pieces in the near future, I hope.
Yeah. I've known Wade for a few years, and
cool.
Yeah, I got a piece of his artwork hanging up in my a little ink piece hanging up in my living room. But yeah, his beadwork is amazing. And yours, I mean, I'm only seeing it via the web, but your piece is real. I love your work. I love the piece in that hat is just amazing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
What made you start getting into the beadwork? Just kind of a heritage thing, or what made you go that direction?
Yeah, I think I've always loved beadwork and earrings and regalia and moccasins. And I just said, you know what, I can buy it all day long and support all the artists that I love. But I have a vision of my own, and I want to, I haven't seen, I like contemporary colors. I like contemporary designs. And so what I was looking for, I necessarily couldn't find among other bead artists. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to learn, I'm going to make my own stuff in the vision that I have in my mind. And so that's kind of what prompted me to do it. But I definitely still keep a lot of the traditional designs, shapes, meanings intact, but do it sort of sometimes in a contemporary way.
So Todd's showing a turtle. I love this one. This is really cool.
Yeah, I did that. It's an amulet. It's a beaded amulet. And I made that for my cousin who had a baby 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago. And what these amulets are for is that, and this is a traditional piece, is that when the baby is born, you give them this baby an amulet, and it's sort of a pouch. So I know it's hard to see. It looks very two-dimensional looking at it, but it's actually two leather pieces stitched together. The top is beaded and the bottom has a little slit on the bottom inside so that you can stick things inside this pouch. And what goes in there is the umbilical cord. When the baby's umbilical cord falls off, you put hair clippings in there. When their baby teeth fall out, you're supposed to put them in there. And the idea is that when all these things are collected, you stitch up that slit that's in there, and then this gets carried with them throughout their life. Sometimes mothers will hang it above their baby's cradle as sort of a toy or something to look at. But when you die, you're supposed to be buried with it.
Oh, did not know that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing the history behind this.
Yeah, sure.
What's the internal pattern inside the circle?
Yeah. So it's a two triangles sort of reflecting from each other. And that is a very, very common symbolic design seen in a lot of Plains tribes, particularly my tribe. And it represents what's above is also below. So we honor our ancestors that have passed on and gone back up to the stars. Our creation story tells us that we came from the Milky Way, and then we come through the Big Dipper to Earth. We're star people. We're people of the stars, and our star knowledge is very, very in depth. And so this sort of is a reflection of that what happens here on Earth is also happening above, and vice versa. And that when we leave this human journey, we go back to the stars to be amongst our ancestors.
That's cool. I love that. That's a great story.
Is that star information, the constellations or what have you, is that something that's shared, that's passed down from generation to generation? Did you get any of that as a child?
I've gotten a little bit here and there from my dad, but definitely I'm not an expert. There's folks that I admire that have a lot more in-depth knowledge about the star knowledge that I speak to, but it's very common, belief that, that we come from the stars, we go back to the stars, and that our people hold and have this knowledge.
Because we have listeners not only from all over the United States, but also other countries, kind of describe where you come from as far as what the land's like and what the terrain, I guess, for lack of description.
So I come from the Great Plains, and it is very flat, very grassy. We have some of the most beautiful wildflowers or prairie flowers you could ever imagine. The meadowlarks love to come out in the summertime and sing to us. We have these big grasshoppers that love to chase us as we run through the prairies. And the sky is like something you've never seen before. It almost is like you're in a globe when you're on the plains. It just encapsulates you. The sky is just something I always long for. When I go back home, I just can't wait to experience the sky when I go there. But it's very flat, no hill, some rolling hills, soft hills. We have some buttes and some, little plateaus here and there. But for the most part, it's land as far as the eye can see.
Lots of songbirds.
Yeah, lots of songbirds.
That's the one thing I love about going out on the plains and the prairie.
Yeah.
You got to actually be experiencing it firsthand to really appreciate it. I think if you're just driving in a car or something, you don't have any appreciation when you're like, oh, it's long, it's flat, it's boring, whatever. But seriously, you got to get out of the car and you need to just like stop and be quiet for a while and just be in tune to all the noises, all the sounds, smells, all of that, right?
Yeah, the smells. I mean, the sweet smell of sweetgrass in the summer and spring is just something that like I grew up knowing. And then, when that's removed and I am no longer experiencing that, it's something I long for. It's just those little things. Yeah, it's the plains, the Great Plains are something to experience, not just drive through. Yeah.
I love to watch, when it's breezy out and watch the wind move across the grass. It's almost like water.
It's so smooth and glistening. It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's very calming.
Yeah. Oh, now I wish it was summer.
I had the exact same thought. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to drive out east and just be for a little bit.
Yeah. And we get a little bit of that in Colorado if you drive east, but yeah, it's definitely different in the Dakotas, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So this beadwork, obviously some of this has been made for relatives and so forth, but you also sell these?
Yeah, I do. And I do. I haven't done it in a little bit. I've been focused so much on mural work this past year and some studio work, but I've been daydreaming of getting back to beading. I make earrings and medallions, which are necklaces, and I definitely want to get back to it. I needed to make a new pair of moccasins. My boys have outgrown theirs and they're due for another pair. So I definitely can't wait to get back to beadwork.
New Magazine is our media sponsor for the Tenant Podcast. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. Look to New for compelling stories from the world of art and fashion. Thanks for listening.
I'm Danielle SeeWalker, and you're listening to the Tenant Podcast.
Let's talk about this mural work, because this is, as you expressed early on in the podcast, this is a new thing that you've been exploring, a new endeavor. Talk about how that all came about. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but how do you go from doing these paintings to doing these large scale pieces on these walls?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to that story I mentioned earlier about how a friend of mine introduced me to another friend who is an artist and invited me to do a mural with her. Her name is Romel, and she's a very known artist here in Denver. It was for a mural festival called Babe Walls, which is a mural festival very unique on its own because it celebrates women and non-binary folks to paint public art, which is something that doesn't happen too often, is not celebrated often. Mural and street art work is typically male dominated. So when I was asked to collaborate with her, we did this whole house, not even just a wall. We did a whole entire house and did all four sides. And that was my very first mural that I did. And it was so exhilarating, scary, exciting, all at the same time. And but it was so addicting. Ever since then, I'm like, all right, I love this. This is so much fun. And the power that public art has is something that I never expected, how much power art on the street can really have for people. And this particular mural that we did in Westminster, Colorado, was done in an area that wasn't the safest area. But when the community came out, and it was a bunch of us, it was like 20 different artists, and we all did this whole area, this whole block, and painted all these buildings in a residential area. The community came out, and some of the feedback we got was, I feel more safe living in this neighborhood now that there's this art around me. So yeah, that was in summer of 2020, my very first mural with Babe Walls. And since then I've done, almost 20 different murals.
Wow. You've been busy. I had no idea.
Yeah, I did. I just finished my 9th one. I did 9 of them this past year in 2021. So it's just been an incredible journey.
So when you're painting murals, what kind of medium do you use? What kind of paint?
So I, for this particular one, for Bay Balls, my first one was just bucket paint. So good old fashioned paint from Home Depot or Lowe's with brush. And that's what I was comfortable with. But I really, really wanted to push myself and start learning how to use spray paint and aerosol, because that's what street art is mostly, very much dominated by spray paint. So I did a little bit of spray paint in this one, but mostly just brush, because that's what I was comfortable with. But since then, like this past year, I've really pushed myself and done some murals just 100% spray paint, just learning from the women around me that just use spray paint. So, but this particular one that we're looking at is just brush, bucket and brush.
I kind of really like the whole solid look of the bucket paint, to be honest with you. It's very, like you said, it's very much like the journal art, very solid colors. And I love the symbolism that you're pulling into some of these. I love the use of the mask, makes it very contemporary, right? On a couple of the other ones. And then I just love the colorfulness of it. They're superb. I would think you've been doing murals for a long time. That's what I would have thought.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Talk about the name of this particular mural, because there's a name for it.
This is based off a drawing that I did that maybe earlier that same year in 2020 called We Are Our Ancestors. And it's kind of a younger woman looking into the face of an older woman, and an older woman looking to the younger woman, sort of like we are our ancestors. But this whole entire house was called Mitakuye Oyasin, which means we are all related. And it's an homage to women. Since this was a all women and non-binary mural festival, I wanted all the figures on this piece to be women and girls, and celebrating women, and also highlighting MMIW. So on the front of this house is a big red handprint, right smack dab and huge on the house. And then all around it are different women in different life stages.
I love that. So like right here, you have a pregnant woman.
Yep, a pregnant woman. I mean, we honor that women are life givers, and that's our superpower. And so I wanted to portray that as well.
I love that. That's life givers, and it's a superpower. I never even thought of it that way, but yeah, that's so cool.
So I know you can't speak to all the different tribes, but in the Lakota, women have a very prominent role in the tribe, right?
Yes, always. Yep. Yeah, we're a very matriarch society. Women were always held in high regard, never looked down upon as kind of secondary to a man. We had equal roles in the community. And, through colonization, sadly, that's been lost a little bit, but it's starting to come back, and we're speaking about it more, that women should be honored. A lot of initiatives and activism and things like that are happening today are led by women. The women are the forefront of these actions.
The way it should be, right? Seriously. I mean, we've talked about this many times on the podcast. I mean, women are the ones that move our society and culture forward. They're the ones that pass down a lot of the stories and traditions. They're nurturers. They should be recognized as being equal to their male counterparts. It takes all of us to make this thing, to make it go, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. I mean, there's infamous women in my tribe that fought alongside men in wars. I mean, it was definitely not looked upon as being weak to be a woman.
This particular mural that we're looking at, this is on the Denver Indian Center. Is that correct? Yes. So talk about this mural.
So this one kind of goes back to that painting that that you'd mentioned about that the man with the beaded piece on the hat. So that was a study that I was doing for this mural, and you can kind of see it right there in front of us. But this one was after doing Bay Balls, the one we were just speaking about. I was pumped up. I'm like, all right, what wall can I do next? So I reached out to the Denver Indian Center and asked, hey, listen, it's the pandemic. Nobody's doing anything these days. I've been painting inside my house. I'd love to be outside and paint another mural. Would you guys be open if I painted your walls? They have great walls, as you can see. It was just these blue walls that were an empty canvas in my eyes. And so after, a couple talks, they said, yeah, sure. Send us what you're thinking. And coupled with that, I wanted to convey the importance of protecting ourselves and protecting not only ourselves during the pandemic, but our elders and those around us. Native American people were hit the hardest during the pandemic in terms of stats and deaths. And it was a crisis for a long time. Specifically, I don't know if you guys remember seeing or hearing the news about Navajo Nation and how it was just absolutely terrible for them. So I wanted to do a piece that said, to mask up. And it's not only just about protecting ourselves, but it's about honoring and protecting our elders who are very subject to getting ill. And so that's what this piece is about. It's different people amongst different generations, different tribes that are all there with each other in community and protecting each other.
Are they still seeing high numbers on the different reservations? Do you know, as far as COVID is concerned?
It's come down quite a bit. We had it under control. Now with this new variant, it's spiking up everywhere across all communities. I've been following my tribe's stats, and they're going up again. Yeah.
Yeah, this new variant is crazy, and it's scary. It's, like you said, it's tearing through the population everywhere.
Yeah.
This is so beautiful. And I drive past the Denver Indian Center all the time. And I had no idea that this was your mural at the time until I started, doing research to do this episode. And awesome. I was like, oh, that's so cool that Danielle painted this. So
thank you. It's sort of kind of going back to the winter count I mentioned earlier about documenting what was happening in a year. Historically, what my people have done is that each year from winter to winter, they would document through this ledger style on hides what was going on in that year. And this was obviously 2020. And so I wanted this sort of to kind of be a modern or contemporary perspective of what was going on in 2020 for our people. So it's sort of my winter count for the 2020 year.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. I love how you incorporated the history and the awareness, bringing awareness, and then creating this beautiful masterpiece on this building.
Oh, thank you.
Have you gotten a lot of great feedback from the community?
Yes. I mean, this building is used for various purposes for the Denver American Indian community and Native community guests that come in from out of state. They come to the Denver Indian Center. And so I painted this for my people, for my community here. And I just have gotten everyone loves it. And I'm so glad.
And then this mural that I'm looking at, this is another mural that you did for this year's Bay Balls. Is that right?
Yes.
So talk about this, because this is very different than the other murals that you've done, in that you're incorporating wheat pasting. Yeah.
Yes, I did wheat pasting, kind of a little of everything. I did a little bit of spray paint stencil work, wheat pasting, and then, the brush work with that, using bucket paint. But this one was done in collaboration with a friend of mine, and also who sits on the Bay Balls committee alongside me. Her name is Adri Norris. She's another just amazing woman artist that does a lot of wheat pasting herself. And so we collaborated together, and we wanted to do something powerful. We're both very I don't know how to describe it, but we're both very predominant in bringing stories to the surface, especially kind of in an activism type of way. She's African-American. She's born and raised in Barbados, born in Barbados, raised here in the US, but she has that history, and she's a Black woman. And so our idea when we were kind of brainstorming on our collaboration was she was going to do something with the Black Panthers, and I was going to do something with the American Indian movement, which were happening simultaneously during the Civil Rights era. And they actually crossed paths and supported one another. The Black Panthers would be there at AIM events, and AIM would go to Black Panther events. And so we wanted to do a mural, and we're only looking at my portion of it, but to the left of mine is hers with the Black Panther. And so, this is an homage to Madonna Thunderhawk, who is the piece that I painted right here. And she was one of the women leaders of the American Indian movement of the time. And my auntie, who's a really good friend of hers, Phyllis Young, is also portrayed throughout this mural as well. And so I wanted to pay homage to these powerful Lakota women who were the backbone of these movements during this time, but they didn't ever get the recognition that they deserved. The men did. So a lot of folks, when they hear American Indian movement or AIM, they think of the men that were the face of it, but the women were the backbone.
Yeah. Russell Means and Dennis Banks, really.
Yep.
That's the only thing people think about, right?
Yeah, but Madonna Thunderhawk, Phyllis Young, a lot of these women that were portrayed here were right there, if not even, doing more work behind the scenes. They helped stop things like forced sterilization of Native women that was happening all the way through up to the 70s and 80s. They helped enforce the Native American Child Welfare Act, that we needed to keep our Native children within Native homes. So they really, really planted a lot of seeds.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm glad you addressed that because, they have a very laser focused view of what AIM is and what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's good to bad to all of it. But what I wanted to highlight was some of the women that were doing amazing work during this time. There's some controversial things around AIM that if you really dive deep, you can uncover and read about yourself. But here, this is all about what the women were doing and highlighting that.
No, I think that's a great story. And I'm glad you're sharing those because I think it's so important to share that history.
Thank you.
How did you like working with Adri?
Adri is awesome. I learned so much from her. I've looked up to her. And so being able to work alongside her and learn from her was a dream come true. I mean, I'm just in awe of her all the time. So it was incredible.
Yeah, she's an amazing lady. We had her on the podcast and just a lot of fun to talk to. And it was a really good discussion too. And I've seen her art. We went to Redline and she wasn't there, but I've seen some of her art in person. Just an amazing artist as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And then I got one other question for this. Working with wheat paste, how was that experience?
It was fun, except for when it was windy, because I had my table laid out with all my paper and cutouts. But no, it was really, really good. I would love to do another wheat paste sometime in the future. It was really cool. I loved it. Again, it's like going back to like me being kind of dabbling in these different mediums. I love to try new things and always evolve and incorporate old stuff with new stuff. So this was kind of just another one of those experiences.
Oh, that's cool.
And it really, that experimentation, you never know what it's going to lead to, right? Like changing that thought process in your head, like, oh, wow. You never know where that idea is going to come from. You're like, oh, I could totally incorporate this into this, this piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love, and I didn't know about this until I read your book once again, but I love that you incorporated the Oscar in here. So talk about the significance of the Academy Award statue being incorporated into this mural that's highlighting the work of AIM and the Black Panthers.
Yeah, so within this is Sachin Littlefeather holding up the award with the Academy behind her. And I can't remember the year. It was in 1970 something without kind of looking back and referencing the year. But it was in the 70s when Marlon Brando won an Oscar for Best Actor. And he refused to accept it. And he sent Sachin Littlefeather to accept it on his behalf. And she actually did not accept it. I should say, rephrase that. She refused the award on his behalf, I should say. And it was all about bringing awareness to AIM and what was going on for American Indians during that time, but also to bring to awareness to Hollywood about redface and how a lot of non-Native people were playing Native people in Hollywood. And it's still going on to this day, to be honest. But it was all about the injustices of Native people in Hollywood, but also bringing awareness to what was going on outside of Hollywood and just the injustices happening to Native people.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting story that you incorporated into the book, and I had no idea that happened, and that Marlon Brando saw this happening in the film industry and decided he was going to, kind of call it out.
Yeah. And it's allies like that really help elevate. Because again, Native people are such a low percentage of the whole population that even if we collectively all raise our voice at the same time, we're still not heard. And so when we have allies like that have a platform, it's so great to really have that.
I want to pivot to talking about one of your other passion projects that you've been working on for a long time. And that's the Red Road Project.
Yes.
Talk about what the Red Road Project is and how that came about.
So the Red Road Project started in 2013. And it was born out of an old wine cellar from the 1600s in London. And my best friend lives in London, and I visit her often. And one day in 2013, early 2013, I was visiting her and we were sipping some wine and just kind of talking about catching up on life. And she's like, hey, I read this article about Wounded Knee and how there's some land for sale. And then that sort of sparked other conversation about what was going on in South Dakota at that time. There was some other crazy story that was out. And I just said, you know what? It's really sad to me that you living all the way in Europe, these are the stories that you're hearing. Like, are you hearing about all the language revitalizations going on? Are you hearing about, all the awesome things that Native people are working on today? And she's like, no, sadly. And I go, exactly. And I'm just tired of it. Like, this is what is put out into the media. And it's always non-Native people telling these stories about our people on our behalf. And it's just perpetuating microaggressions and further stereotypes. So later that night, we kept talking about it. And I said, you know what? We should tell the stories. As a Native person, like I could tell stories just on my own, but she's a photographer and I really love her work and her approach. She's a portrait photographer. And so long story short, that night we bought plane tickets to North Dakota and we were there a month later, and it was all centered around my family was having some ceremonial things going on. There was a powwow happening. And I just said, you know what, there's no better time than now. Let's book a plane ticket. Let's go. And let's just talk to a bunch of people and start telling their stories. And we had no vision, no like clear path on what that was going to look like, but we just knew we wanted to talk to the Native people and give them a platform to tell their own stories and what they were doing and all the great things that is happening in Indian country. And so that's how it was born. And then, fast forward to 2022, where we're at today, we're still working on the project. We've had a lot of different ways to showcase the work we've done so far through different exhibitions around the world. That's sort of how I got the book that I wrote, that opened up the door for me to do that book. But it's a work in progress, and we're not sure when it'll ever end. But really, the main objective is to just redirect the narrative of Native American people today in the 21st century, and share all the great things that people are doing, giving them a platform, and having this project be led by a Native person.
What is your friend's name?
Her name is Carlotta Cardana. She's actually Italian, born in Italy, but currently lives in London. That's where her work is based out of. We met when we were in high school in Nebraska. I lived in Nebraska for a year. She was a foreign exchange student that year. Of all places, they sent her to this little town in Nebraska. But it was meant to be because our paths crossed. We became sisters right away, and we still consider each other sisters. And she's a photographer. So this project is a photo documentary project, and we're starting to incorporate film because we realized we were speaking to a lot of elders who had really, really powerful stories to tell. And we kicked ourselves for not recording them on video. And they since passed. So we said, you know what, we're going to start incorporating video components to our work to document that.
That's fantastic.
That is fantastic. And I think it's so cool that you guys met, in Nebraska, as you were attending high school, and she was there on, as a foreign exchange student. That's really awesome. And you continued this friendship and then developed this project. I mean, what a wonderful project.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an awesome project. Right now we were just awarded a grant here through the Arts and Society and Redline here in Denver. And we want to put a focus on urban Indians and highlighting the history of the Native American Relocation Act that the government put in place in 1956, where it took Native people off of the reservation and put them into urban areas to essentially to assimilate them, another form of attempted genocide. And Denver was one of those cities that was identified as one of these relocation cities. And so when I was talking about a lot of folks that have been born and raised in Denver or Colorado, they had no idea that this history existed, and is one of the reasons why there's such a high population of Native people here today. And so through our project, we want to kind of highlight that piece of history and talk to the folks that have been here for generations now on what that meant, how that has affected their culture, their identity, if it has. And so that's a work in progress on what we're working on now.
Wow, fantastic. So where all has this project taken you?
It's taken us all over the country. We started out in North Dakota, obviously where I'm from, went to South Dakota and sort of followed the path south. So we hit all the states south, and ended up in the Southwest. We've done California, which is a very interesting history with Native people. We even went all the way to Louisiana. There's a tribe there that was in the news, gosh, now probably almost 5 years ago now, where they were being considered to be the first climate change refugees. They wanted to move them off the coast and inland, and we wanted to explore what that meant in terms of loss of identity, because these are coastal people and they now wanted to move them inland away from the water. And I just, my heart broke for them, thinking like, how will they be sustainable? These are people that lived off the coast and they want to move them inland. So we explored that in Louisiana, which was quite interesting. And we've been all over.
I can imagine how rewarding this has been, but also, like you said, heartbreaking, because you're seeing things in these various tribes, these different people that are located geographically all over the place. And I can't imagine where, how you would feel if all of a sudden you're losing your land because of climate change. I grew up in Alaska, and I know that it's affecting the various tribes and native peoples there as far as hunting. And so it's happening all over. It's not just, Louisiana or California, or whatever. It's affecting indigenous people all over the world. Worldwide. And it's going to affect us. I mean, it's affecting us right now. We just saw this horrendous fire here in Colorado, the Marshall Fire, where, 1,000 structures were lost and people are displaced. It's affecting everyone. Talk about, if you would, for just a moment, kind of the different perspective of how indigenous people interact and see the land, and how people outside of those indigenous cultures, your perception at least, of how it's looked at by other people.
So, this is like such a, it goes so deep within me, because I feel so strongly about the connection to the land. We all come from the land, whether we're indigenous, wherever we're indigenous to. We're all indigenous to these lands in some way, shape, or form. And in my culture, we believe, it's that saying, "Mitakuye Oyasin," we are all related, not just each other as humans, but we're related to the land, the water. We come from the water. We're conceived, or after we're conceived, we're in water. We're in our mother's womb, which is made of water. We're born. We can't live without water. So it's all these things that we have. It's all related, and we're all connected. Our four-legged and our winged relatives are also very important to us. And it's a matter of, we all have to take care of each other. And as humans, we have a voice, and we can use our voice to speak on behalf of our water relatives, on behalf of our plant relatives, our four-legged relatives, because they don't have a voice, and we need to speak up for them. And so having this indigenous knowledge really is, I think, a medicine that we all can use to heal our planet and our world and where we're at. We're in such a bad place right now with climate change, whether you believe in it or not. The facts are there. And I think we just really need to realize that we're all connected. And I think sometimes folks that are outside of this mindset think, well, it's not directly affecting me. My house didn't burn down in this Marshall Fire, or my water, I can drink water safely out of my faucet. So it doesn't touch them. And so they don't put any effort into helping that solution. So it's really sad when I really sit and think about it. But it's something that I think anybody and everybody can take indigenous knowledge and heal ourselves in our environments.
I definitely feel strongly, and I know Wes does too, as a father, and Wes is a grandfather. I want us to continue to thrive and proliferate, and I want my children to have a world that they can exist in, and have the kind of life that I had growing up. At the same time, I know we're not doing what we're supposed to. We're not stewards of the land. Definitely not like the indigenous people of this continent and other places around the world where they're much more connected. What do you think the disassociation is? Is it just that we're just greedy? That our culture is greedy, and we put the almighty dollar before everything else?
In my experience, that's what it's been. I mean, the Standing Rock, the tribe I come from, had a pretty infamous kind of protest happening around oil pipelines. And we were up against big oil companies, which in turn is interlocked with our government systems. And so we had this issue where we were fighting for our water, but the dollar eventually won because the oil companies had the money to pay out, any laws that could be put in front of them, and even went to the Supreme Court. And so I think the dollar and big banks and all of that are very interwoven. And it's really sad that that's what we're thinking. I mean, when we're, as Indigenous people, we think about several generations ahead of us and we make decisions based on that. It's not only for our own children that are living here with us today or our grandchildren. It's about 7 generations next to come. And what do we want that for them? Because our ancestors laid a path for us 7 generations ago for us to be here and, be where we're at today. I mean, it's pretty interesting to think about that. Like even my grandmother, when she was born, wasn't even considered an American citizen. And that was just 2 generations ago. And now like we have a woman in the White House in the Department of the Interior leading that. It's incredible. And so we need to think about where we're at today and make decisions today for 7 generations ahead of us. And in all ways.
Where does that idea of the 7 generations, what does that stem from? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there was a prophecy by Black Elk who had a dream about basically saying in 7 generations, we will heal again. And it was during a time of colonization that he had this dream and things were falling apart. Indian wars were happening. Our buffalo were being decimated. Things were just really, really in a really bad state. And he prophesied that 7 generations from now, that generation will be able to take things back and things will start getting better again. And many believe that we're in that 7th generation today.
It irritates me, makes me actually incredibly angry how short-sighted we are, because this is going to come and nip us in the ass at some point. It's just inevitable. And that people just won't see, they have these blinders on. But I am hopeful with the appointment of Deb Haaland and then the recent appointment of Chuck Sams III as National Park Service Director, that we're putting people in these positions that have a totally different outlook, that were raised with that idea of being stewards of the land and that we're connected to it. Are you hopeful as well?
I am. I'm so hopeful. And I was really excited about that appointment for the national parks, because the national parks is just another thing that, is an issue Native people are fighting all the time with getting access to these sacred lands, protecting them, preserving them. And so it's, like you said, it's a matter of now we're starting to put the right people in the right positions to make action and make positive change. And so I can only be hopeful.
What's funny is last night I was watching YouTube and I ran across a segment on Carl Sagan, who's the astronomer, talking about climate change in 1985 in front of Congress. And, we think this is kind of a new thing, but we've been talking about this for a long time, and we still can't get traction from Congress to take it seriously. That's the thing that frustrates me the most.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how people can't see it.
Right. It's right here.
Right here. Yeah. I mean, Colorado's experiencing the warmest winter that we've ever had in recorded history right now. And it's like, some people will say, well, we go through these ebbs and flows and, we're just in that ebb right now or whatever, but I don't know.
Yeah. I'm glad you addressed the whole 7th generation thing, because I saw that as a segment on and I wanted you to talk about that. So thanks for sharing.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. No worries.
And talking with these different people all over the United States for the Red Road Project, can you share with us some special moments that you experienced in doing this project over the years, like either knowledge or an experience with someone that you had the opportunity to interact with that you probably wouldn't have had otherwise had you not had this project?
Oh gosh, there's so many moments. I think one of the first ones that I remember was meeting a woman from the Yemas Pueblo in New Mexico. And this was during the time when I was really exploring my own identity. And I had a very tough upbringing in a lot of different ways. And I was really just trying to figure out like how to accept who I was and my identity. And then I met this woman. She's, a few years younger than me, but we come from kind of the similar generation. And just speaking to her coming from the Southwest, from a Pueblo tribe, not even nearly related or closely to a Plains tribe, but her stories and her experiences resonated and aligned so much to mine. And it was kind of this awakening moment for me where I was like, wow, I understand where she's coming from and I can relate to this. And it's okay that I feel this way. And our experiences are so similar. And we're both now just, really rising above that and doing positive things where our paths could have taken a completely different turn and we could have been another statistic in a different way, shape, or form. And so that was a really eye-awakening moment for me with kicking off that project. Working with the tribe in California, the Winnemem-Wintu, was another really, really powerful experience for me through this project. It was all about them bringing back their salmon, which is sacred to them, just like the buffalo are very sacred to my people. I realize these people who come from the coast honor the salmon in the ways that we honor our buffalo, and what they will do to speak up for their water relatives. It was just incredible. And it was a 2-week journey that we started from San Francisco and went all the way up to Mount Shasta through walking, running, biking, horseback riding. We were on boats, making this journey in honor of the salmon and putting prayers out there for the return of their salmon, which were now are dying and going extinct because of the dam that went up. And the salmon no longer can spawn and breed. And so the government has input a GMO fishery. So they're putting these GMO fish into the water versus the salmon that naturally happen there, which is so interesting and crazy. So that whole experience of working with them was just amazing and incredible to see how, again, very different tribe, very different beliefs, grew up in a very different terrain and environment, but we all are very aligned and similar on how we speak up and what we do and our actions and how we are stewards of the land and speak up for our animal relatives.
The Red Road Project, and for those that are listening, it's redroadproject.com. You can check out all the beautiful photographs and all the wonderful storytelling and topics that they explore on the website. Where does that name Red Road come from?
So it's derived from teachings that talk about being on the red road or the positive path in life. And so that's what it sort of represents and means, is that, you have these different roads that you can take, but the red road is a road you'll take to make positive change in yourself, in your community, and in your environments. And so since this project is all about highlighting the positive things that are happening that Native people are taking, contrary to being put up against so many tough and seriously detrimental scenarios and situations, there's people that are still rising above that and doing really positive work. And so the Red Road Project, the Red Road is a way to kind of represent that, is taking that positive road, the positive path.
I love this project and I love what you're doing with it and the awareness that you're bringing to people. And so thank you for doing that work. Seriously, I think it's really important. You should be really happy and proud for that accomplishment. And I know that you're going to continue to work on this. And I'm curious to see how this next portion of the project with Denver kind of shakes out.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
There's also an Instagram page for the project as well. And it's at the Red Road Project. So check that out. Let's talk about this wonderful book that you wrote. It's called Still Here, A Past to Present Insight of Native American People and Culture. What made you decide to write a book, and how did this all come about?
Yeah. So again, kind of a network through the Red Road Project. I had met this woman in Italy who worked at a university, and she got wind of the Red Road Project and was like, hey, Carlotta and I met with her one day, and she was like, hey, listen, would you be really interested at all in any of the slightest bit of coming to speak to some universities here in Italy? We have a very strong Native American program and people are very interested in it. And we'd love to have you guys come and talk about your project. And so we went along that and we said, yes, absolutely. But then on the side of that, she's like, listen, I also have this friend who has a publication and they're looking for something, new and a different topic. I'm going to pitch to them the idea of a book about Native American people. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, let me know. So, fast forward a few months later, we were in touch with that publication. company, and they loved the idea. And I said, well, I don't want this book to be a really long, intricate book. I envision it being a very easy foundational book to read that anybody from age, I think it was, and this is not my wheelhouse, but editors and publications and book houses can run a book and tell what age range it should be for. And they ran some of the sampling through their computer systems and found that it's definitely a middle school all the way through adult. So that's exactly what I wanted it to be. Because I have children in middle school, and I was like, their peers could learn a lot. So I wanted it to be a very quick, easy read, but still address a lot of the topics that I am constantly being asked about, that I feel like if anybody that knows little to nothing about Native American history could pick this up and learn a few things, and very foundational things. And then from there, they could go and do their own research and dive deeper into like 500-page books on some of these topics. So that was kind of the influence behind why I wanted to do this book and how it all happened.
Yeah, it's a short book. It's 85 pages. It's a really fast, easy read, but just chock full of information. And I really did. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think this, like you said, kind of touched on, it should be part of the curriculum for all schools, truly. It's stuff that I had no idea about, because that's just not what gets taught in our schools,
Right.
It's all from the white perspective, and, they just gloss over it, Talk about what people will learn about when they read this book a little bit more.
So it really you can't talk about what's going on today or in present times without kind of touching upon some history and some historical context. So really, when you open the book, the first thing you read about is sort of a very quick overview of kind of starting from colonization and all the way up, talking through different topics about, reservations. A question I get all the time is, what is a reservation? What's it like? Is our teepees still there? So I talk about what is a reservation and why they were formed. And then, and then we talk about language loss and our connection to the land. And then it talks about activism. And again, kind of then going into the MMIW epidemic. So it covers a broad range of topics from very historical to very current, and sort of everything in between. But again, very easy to read. And I think just kind of is very in your face, highlighting the important things or some of the answers, a lot of the questions folks have.
I loved the narrative, and I loved how you went about it. One of the things that I didn't know much about was, I'd heard of them, but I didn't realize the whole boarding school thing. Talk a little bit about that, because I don't think people realize that this whole thing went on and how detrimental it was to the various tribes.
Yeah, and I think more folks are becoming a little bit more aware of it with the news recently. In Canada, Canada's government has implemented a truth and reconciliation amongst their Indigenous people and First Nations there, and they have been doing a lot of work in exhuming bodies under residential schools in Canada. So this issue was not just here in the U.S. This is actually a North American issue, and Canada suffered a lot of the same things that the U.S. has suffered in terms of our Indigenous people. And so through that, they started exhuming a lot of these bodies that were buried with unmarked graves under these schools. And we, as Native people here in the U.S., always knew that this was a problem. We always knew that our children died at these schools in very, very bad ways. A lot of them are relatives, and it was just never acknowledged by the government. And what these schools was that in the late 1800s, they started taking children from tribes, from their families, and putting them into these boarding schools. And the whole concept and idea behind these schools was, all right, we're trying our hardest to get rid of these Native people. We're not successful in doing it, completely. So what we're going to do is we're going to just kill the Indian, but we're going to save the man. We're going to put them to use. We're going to assimilate them into our mainstream culture and make them contributing members of our society. But we want to get rid of all the savagery that they exist, et cetera. And so they would take these children from their parents as young as 5-6 years old, and they wouldn't see their families or at all until maybe the holidays, if that. And when they would enter these schools, they were put through a very severe cleansing process where they would like wash them with like lime soap and soak them in bleach or gasoline to kill any germs or whatever, cut their hair off completely, take away their clothes. They would give them new names in some cases. So you're no longer, Kamimi Laʻoiate, you're now John or whatever. And so the names were taken away, and they just a whole new identity. And if you were caught speaking your language, which most of these kids coming in didn't know a lick of English, didn't know anything. And so they were forced to learn English, forced to learn the Christianity ways and learn a new religion, and it was forced upon them. And they were severely punished. In a lot of cases, they were raped, they were beaten to death. And a lot of these children never came home, and they were killed in a very traumatic way. And even the ones that did survive came out very scarred and were never the same. So it kind of goes back to that two worlds concept. They graduated their boarding school with an education, went back home to their families, but didn't feel like they fit in anymore. They no longer felt connected to their homes, their people, their ways, but yet in the the white world, they didn't feel connected. They didn't feel like they fit in there either. So this brought upon a ton of issues. So I'm a firm believer that the majority of the issues that we have faced historically, even through today, are all stemmed back and rooted to the boarding school era and this sense of lost identity, lost language, loss of our traditions, our customs, and the abuse that was endured has been passed on residually. I mean, my grandmother was abused severely. She never spoke Lakota to my dad or his siblings. Because her mindset was, you don't need to know that language. It's not going to do you any good. And so we lost a lot of our ways. And in some cases, folks self-medicated through alcohol. Alcohol was being introduced at that time, and alcoholism spiked because of this trauma that they were experiencing, and they just wanted to forget it. And so alcoholism is a big problem, and has been. And it all goes back to this trauma that people experience at these schools and just passed down generation to generation.
And these are things that people, because they don't have that experience, right? They don't think about, but that's what your book does as far as kind of, addressing some of these issues, and definitely opened my mind. I mean, I knew a little bit about some of this stuff, but like I said, I didn't know to the extent that you're laying out. And when you start reading this, you realize just how complex this whole thing is. I mean, obviously the boarding schools were harsh and terrible, and like you said, contributed to a major portion of loss of a lot of these things, and loss of identity with the various tribes and Native American culture. But you put it all together with everything that's been experienced up to that point, right? I mean, all the previous history of being displaced off your homeland to some, crappy piece of land that, you couldn't really grow anything. You didn't have the animals there that you were used to hunting. And a lot of times, a lot of these tribes weren't farmers. Right. And so they're put on land and said, here, now you farm this land. Well, they don't have that skill set, and nobody's there teaching them. Right. I mean, it's just a multitude of things. It's so complex. There's no wonder that Native Americans feel the way that they do. They should be pissed. They should have this animosity towards the government, and and white people in general. I totally get it. If that had happened to my family, I'd feel the same way. You come hurt my children, or all the atrocities that occurred over time. I'm not going to stand there and take that either, So here's another part of that I didn't realize. So Native Americans weren't recognized as citizens of the United States until like the 1920s, right? Like 1920, something like that. Yeah. And they didn't even have voting rights until till 1960. Is that correct?
Yeah. Full voting rights across every state. Yep. Until the late 60s.
So, I mean, that to me, I had no idea. And that was a little bit mind blowing, that here these people are that have just been decimated and mistreated and displaced, and they have everything taken away and not given anything in return.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely have always been thought of as unhuman, I guess, or second class citizen, not even citizens. I don't even know. I mean, if you think about it, we're given an enrollment number. Okay. We're given an enrollment number based on our blood quantum. No other race is, aside from dogs and horses, are given a number based on their blood quantum. And so even to this day, we still face that. I mean, I carry around a card that has a number. It tells how much blood I have and it's completely ridiculous. And so we still face this kind of ridicule. And, our Declaration of Independence today still says merciless Indian savages in a government document. I mean, we're still looked at as savages.
And then you have the issue of negotiating the various systems. Like you have to have multiple things in place to even like work or participate in any kind of programs, whether it be, you need a card for to get these type services. You have to have your social security card. Speak a little bit about that, because people don't realize that there's this whole system in place that makes it really difficult for Native Americans to just go on with their everyday lives, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure. There's a lot of governmental systems that are designed to help and aid Native people. And, of course, you got to prove yourself. You got to prove that you're actually Native, and you can't just say I'm Native, or, you have to have this identification. You have to have blood. You have to have like trace history that shows that you're Native. So it's just a lot of extra hoops you have to jump through to prove who you are. And there's no other group of population that has to do that in this country.
That's ridiculous. I got to ask you, I mean, you sound like you have a pretty good handle on the Lakota language. How did you learn it?
Self-taught. So, it's again, we're this generation that we live in, we're reclaiming back a lot of things, including our languages. And so I took it upon myself to learn it. And I owe it to my ancestors. I owe it to my children and my future children to keep that alive and pass that down. I'm not fluent at all, but I'm learning, and I'm still learning. I'll be a lifelong learner. But it's important to know our languages. A lot of our ceremonies, our prayers, our life ways are in our languages that don't translate to English. And so without knowing your language, you can't fully know your identity and who you are and where you come from. So it's important for me to keep learning.
And I assume that you're passing this on to your sons as well?
Yeah, I'm trying. I mean, they're teenagers, so they're like, I have to learn Spanish, Mom. I'm in Spanish class. So but I use it around the house. I call them, they call me Ina, which is mother, and Lakota. We have phrases that we kind of speak this like mix of English and Lakota in our house. But yeah, I mean, one day I think they'll learn how important it is.
I want to talk about one of your other projects that I read about, and it's called Creative Nations. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So I partnered up with the Dairy Art Center in Boulder, myself, along with a couple other Native people here in Denver, Kelly Holmes, who's from Cheyenne River in South Dakota, and JC Bial, who is Dene from Navajo Nation. Us three are sort of spearheading a lot of the initiatives that Creative Nations is doing. And the Dairy Art Center in Boulder has been gracious to give us space and introduced us to some donors who have given us some fiscal backing to be able to do a lot of Native arts programming, from everything from visual arts to Native comedy shows. We have a Native comedy show coming up here in a couple of weeks in Boulder, where it's an all Native comedian lineup. Kelly is very involved in fashion, and she started the first ever fashion / mainstream sort of Native own and run magazine. So she is very integrated into the fashion world. And so she brings she does Native fashion shows and things like that. So we all sort of do our own thing, but our objective through Creative Nations is to bring opportunities to Native people all over the country, even on reservations and in cities, urban areas, and give them an opportunity to showcase and practice their art and show their art across all mediums.
That's fantastic.
It is.
Thank you.
You're a busy, busy woman. Oh my God, you got your hands in about everything. That's phenomenal.
I know. I'm like, I don't know. But it's all passion. It's all stuff I'm very passionate about. So it's easy, and it all kind of fits together. So.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
I admire that. And I'm not that much different. I got a lot of irons in the fire as well. But yeah, it's nice to see somebody that's really taking for lack of a better description, the bull by the horns, and really kind of embracing your heritage and moving it forward in a positive and powerful way. So that's awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Do you sleep at all?
I do. 8 hours is like, I have to have my sleep or I cannot be productive. So I do.
Good for you.
And what else are you involved with in and around town as far as projects or boards or anything that you sit on?
Yeah, so I sit on the Streetwise board, which is based in Boulder, and it's the public art mural festival that they do every year. So I sit on that board, and I'm so proud because the founder of that, Leah, is just amazing in what she does, and her whole objective behind the mural festival that she puts on in Boulder is to bring awareness to activism, and she calls it artivism. So all her murals are done with an intention to bring awareness to something. So that aligns very well with what I'm, my beliefs and what I try to do. So I love sitting on that board. And then of course I sit on the board of Walls here in Denver as well. And that's just been a great experience. And then I'm the co-chair of the Denver American Indian Commission, which is through the city and county of Denver. It's an appointed position through the mayor's office. And I've been happy to serve the past year as the co-chair on that. But I've been on that commission since 2019.
Wow. So I got another question. This is just kind of a broad question, but as an Indigenous woman, what brings you hope?
What brings me hope? I would say, that's a tough question. I have to almost think about it. I say my children bring me hope. Looking at, I look at as anything that I do, I'm just trying to plant a seed for the future, and the future is the future generations are my hope that one day, they're not going to have to face some of the things that I've faced. And so doing any kind of work I can do today is giving me hope that future generations, my great-great-grandchildren won't ever have to face some of the things that I have had to face.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So you kind of touched a little bit on what 2022 holds for you. You want to talk about some of the things that you're looking forward to, some of the projects, some of the shows you might be a part of that are coming up?
Yeah, so I am going to be doing a big mural project near the Broncos Stadium through the city, working with another indigenous relative of the South. He's Mexican. We're going to collaborate on a big mural project here coming up in the spring. I have a lot of little murals projects that I'm going to be working on as well. I have a solo exhibition, my very first, at the Littleton Museum, coming up in the summer. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm just kind of also freaking out about building that body of work, but I'm excited. I'm working on some legislative actions. We're introducing a bill for missing and murdered Indigenous Women's Task Force here in the state of Colorado. So I'm working closely with a community of other Indigenous people here and a senator to help support that bill. So we got some legislative things going on. And definitely another art market that I'm going to be leading through Creative Nations in the fall for Indigenous Peoples Day and Native American Heritage Month.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Lots of caffeine?
Yes. Still drinking my afternoon coffee.
Before we leave off today, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind reading from this book, Still Here, and share with us the Lakota creation story that was told by Albert White Hat Sr. Would you mind?
Yeah.
Would you mind doing that, sharing that with us?
All right, so this is the Lakota creation story as retold by Albert White Hat Sr., who was Sikanju Rosebud Lakota. And it says, in the beginning, there was Ia, a stone. Ia was considered Wakan, sacred. Wa can be translated to something like the one, and Ka is life. Ka is energy. The arteries and the veins in your body are called Ka. They are your source of life. This Ka can give you life or it can take life. This Ka could create or destroy. It is good and evil, both equally powerful. So in the beginning, Ia was Wakan, the sacred one that gives life. In our creation story, we refer to Ia as it because our ancestors never referred to Ia as he or she. In the very beginning, Ia was in total darkness, and the first creation was a huge disk. The disk was half Maka, earth, and half Mani, water, but we call this disk Maka. Ia created this by draining its blood to create. The color of Ia's blood was blue. Maka and Ia got together and separated the color blue and threw it upward, and it became the sky. Húŋkpapÿa. Maka said, "It is dark and it is cold." So Ia created Anpetuli, the daytime sun, to give light and to give warmth. In today's time, we know that it's always our habit to complain, and we always complain right from the beginning. It comes to no surprise that Maka complained from the beginning too. Maka said, "It is too bright and too hot." So Ia drained more of its blood to Hanepiwi, the night moon, in order to create balance to day and night. Then they wanted a source of life, asking, how are we going to live? Ia created Tate, the wind, so we could give breath to life. Then Maka said, "I'm naked and I'm needing covering." So Tate got together with Ia and they talked. They asked Maka, "If Ia gives you a covering, you must promise to give it life and nourishment." And so Maka promised. Life began on earth, the grass, the plants. And as each new creation of life came in, new creations got together to decide on the next creation, and the process went like that. And as each creation would come in, Ia got weaker and weaker because every creation came from Ia's blood, and it was draining Ia's energy and life. Toward the end, woman was created to be like Maka. A woman must be like Maka to give life and to give nourishment to that life, just like Maka does. It's a very special gift that a woman has. Man was created to be like the universe. The universe nourishes and protects the earth. So a man must nourish and protect the woman, and together they create new life. This was the Lakota philosophy and belief system. We come from the blood of Ia. And as each creation came in, the other one was created in the universe. So for instance, the day that you were born, the other you was born in the universe. Whatever you do on earth, the other you is doing that too. Periodically, that other you will send you energy, and whatever you're doing at the moment, it will give you a lot of strength. When creation was completed, Ia got dry and brittle and scattered all over the world. The image which is shown on page 54, which is a symbol of those two triangles mirroring each other, symbolizes what is on earth, the same thing is happening in the heavens. Whatever is in the heavens, the same things are happening on earth. Above us, when creation was created, we had Húŋkpapÿa, which is called Flesh Nation. This is our way of acknowledging the star people. Today, we simply call them the stars, but in our Lakota language, they are our relatives. They are men's flesh above us. On earth, we have Wa Makashkan Oyate, things that move or have a spirit on earth. When this was all done, we addressed this philosophy as simply Mitakuye Oyasin. We are all related.
So beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me share that.
Danielle, it's been an absolute honor and pleasure to spend time with you today. I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to come on and talk with us, and the time that you gave us. That was very generous considering all the things that you are involved with and are working on. And I know Saturdays are probably days where you get to catch up on things and probably create. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day and from other things to spend time with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I echo the sentiment. It's always a pleasure to be able to have a platform and share some information, and just, I'm humbled that anybody would even take interest in what I have to say sometimes. So I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. Once again, we really do thank you. And I want to say, as a father, I know your father would be proud of you because you're doing amazing work. And so thank you so much for the work that you're doing that reflects even on my daughter and my grandchildren. So thank you.
Thanks, Wes. Appreciate it, guys. Well, I hope to see you when you come to Denver. So
yeah, I hope to see you too.
Yeah.
We'll definitely drive by your mural. I can't wait.
Okay. Awesome.
Again, check out Danielle's website and see her just exquisite work. It's SeeWalker.com, and her Instagram is @SeeWalker_art. Check out her collaborative project with Carlotta Cardana, the Red Road Project, at redroadproject.com, and definitely reach out to Danielle if you're interested in obtaining a copy of her book, Still Here, A Past to Present Insight of Native American People and Culture. It's fantastic, concisely written, educational, and I think that everyone should pick up a copy and read it. And on that note, for the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.